So this video, I'm going to have a look at how to use Avogadro's constant, which is this number here, 6.02 by 10 to the 23. I know these calculations seem difficult, but essentially all you need to do is find out the number of moles and then multiply moles by this number. And you'll know that's what they want you to do because they give you this number in the question. If they don't give you this number, you don't use it. But if they do give it to you in the question, you have to use it. And you'll just find moles and multiply by this number. Now, in order to find moles, you need to know this formula triangle, G Mr. moles. And using a formula triangle, if it's moles I want to find, then I cover moles, and what I'm left with is G divided by Mr. So you take your mass in grams, you divide it by your Mr, and you'll work out your moles. And once you've got moles, you just multiply it by this number. So let's have a look at an example question. So I've said how many water molecules are in 3.6 grams of H2O. And in the exam question, they'd give you this number. Because they've given me this number, I know I need to multiply it by the number of moles. But they haven't given me moles, so I need to find moles using this triangle. All right, so I'm going to write down my formula first from my triangle. I know moles equals G divided by Mr. G divided by Mr. Now in the question, I've got something in grams, 3.6. So I'll be able to fill that into my equation straight away. 3.6 grams goes on the top. And my Mr, I'm going to work out using these numbers here that are provided for me. Because it's water, which has a formula of H2O, because there's two H's, it's going to be 1 plus 1, because hydrogen is 1, and 1 oxygen is 16. I add that up and I get 18. So that's the relative formula mass. And then I get 3.6 divided by 18. I do that on my calculator. I should probably be able to do it in my head. And I get 0.2 moles. Now I know how many moles I've got. I'm just going to multiply it by that number. Okay, so it's going to be 0.2 multiplied by 6.02 by 10 to the 23. Make sure you can do that on your calculator. So it's 0.2 multiplied by 6.02, and then this number here on my calculator by 10 to the 23, and that's my answer, 1.204 by 10 to the 23. And you write that down and you get your marks. Okay, so let's go to the exam questions that I've set you for homework. I'm actually going to start on question 4 just because it's actually a bit easier, and I'll work my way backwards. I'm going to start here on question 4. All right. It gives me this number. I know if it gives me this number, I need to find moles and then multiply them. Okay. They've given me a G and they've given me Mr, which makes this quite straightforward. Okay. So moles equals whatever you've got in grams divided by the Mr. In grams, I have got 0.11. The Mr, the relative formula mass, see they've given you CO2. They didn't give it to you as a C and then an O separately. They just gave you the full thing as 44. So I can plug that in straight away. 0.11 divided by 44, I get 2.5 by 10 to the 3. That's my moles. And once I've got moles, I times by that number, 6.02 by 10 to the 23. By 10 to the 23, and I get 1.505 by 10 to the 21. Now, I just as I was writing this, I noticed it says give your answer to 2 significant figures. That's why it's worth 3 marks, even though there are only 2 steps. So I need to put this to 2 significant figures, which is going to be 1.5 by 10 to the 21. So I'm going to scribble that off my answer line and leave it to 2 significant figures. All right, so just as before, you see that number, you need to multiply by moles. So find moles by doing G divided by Mr and then multiply. All right, next one, question 3. Again, they're giving me this number, so I need to find moles and then multiply that number. They've given me a mass, but if you notice this time it's in mg, not in g, it's in milligrams. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is to go from milligrams into grams, okay? And if you forgot this step, you'd still get 2 marks out of 3. So please just show you're working, all right? But to go from milligrams into grams, I'm going to be dividing by 1000. So it's going to be 74 divided by 1000, and I'm going to get 0.074 grams. All right, so now I've got my G. So moles equals G divided by my Mr, which they tell me here, relative mass of copper is 63.5. I don't need to work that out. Divided by the 63.5. And I get this 0.001165. So I'm just going to write it down to quite a few decimal places. And now that I've got moles, again, I'm just timesing by this number. So it's moles times by Avogadro's 6.02 by 10 to the 23. And you get 7.0. And does it tell me how many? It doesn't say significant figures. I'm going to write it to 0.015 by 10 to the 20, okay, and that's going to get me all of my marks. So again, find moles, multiply it by that number, okay. It's just in this case slightly harder because you didn't have mass in grams, it was in milligrams. All right, the next page, I'm going to go down here. I mean, these ones are both a little bit trickier, that's why they're worth 4 marks. All right, but I'm going to do the same thing. They've given me this number. I'm going to find moles. I'm going to multiply by that number. All right. They've given me a mass. It's in grams this time, so no worries there. But instead of giving me the MR, I'm going to have to work it out for myself. And because the formula is a bit awkward, it's a little bit harder to work out. So the formula mass, okay, I can see from my formula that I've got 1 lead, okay. It's not in the bracket, so I'm not going to multiply it by 2. I've just got 1 lead, so that's 207, okay. Inside the bracket, I've got 2 carbons, but there's a 2 outside the bracket. So in total, I do have 4 carbons. Carbon has a mass of 12, so it's going to be 12 times 4. If I look at hydrogen, I've got 3 hydrogens in the bracket. There's a 2 outside the bracket, so that's 6 hydrogens in total. Hydrogen has a mass of 1, and there's 6 of them. And then I've got oxygen. I've got 2 of them inside the bracket, but there's a 2 outside the bracket, so 4 oxygens in total. Oxygen is 16, so it's going to be 16 times 4. And then you'll see I'm adding up all of those numbers to work out what the formula mass is. So 16 times 4 plus 6 plus 12, 4, so 48 plus 207. So I end up with an answer of 325. So you have to work out the Mr. Okay. Now that I've got Mr, I can work out moles, and that's going to be G, which is 16.25, divided by Mr, which is 325, divided by 325, and I get 0.05. And then I need to multiply my moles by Avogadro's constant. So it's going to be that times that. And I get 3.01 by 10 to the 22. If you do all of that, you'll get 3 marks, but you'll see here that it's worth 4, and that's because of what they've got here in bold, how many atoms, okay? So by doing this calculation, what we've worked out is how many lead ethanoates we have. Okay, but in each lead ethanoate, you need to count up how many individual atoms there are and then multiply by that number. Okay, so I know how many lead ethanoates I have, but how many atoms do I have? Well, each lead ethanoate has got 1 lead, has got 4 carbons, has got 6 hydrogens, and has got 4 oxygens. So when I add that up, I get 1 and 4 and 6 and 4. I get 15 atoms. There are 15 individual atoms in each lead ethanoate. This is how many lead ethanoates I have. I times that by 15, and that tells me how many atoms I've got. So 3.01 by 10 to 22. Times by 15, and I get 4.515 by 10 to the 23. Okay, but again, even if you didn't know to do that last step, by doing the other steps, you're going to get 3 out of 4. And even if you messed up your formula mass, but you showed you're working, you're going to get 2 out of 4. So please just attempt these questions. The next one is then very similar. Again, they're giving you Avogadro's number. Again, you're going to find moles, and you're going to multiply. Again, they've given me something in grams, but I'm going to need to work out the Mr before I can divide. So the mister here, I've got 2 aluminiums, all right, it's Al2, so that's going to be 27 times 2, because aluminium is 27. Then I've got a sulfur inside the bracket, so there are 3 sulfurs in total. Sulfur is 32, so it's going to be 32 times 3. And then there's 4 oxygens in the bracket, but a 3 outside. Now brackets always mean multiply, so I've got 12 oxygens in total. So it's going to be 16 times 12. And then I'm adding all of that together. So I got 54 plus 32 times 3 plus 16 times 12. And I get 342, okay? And to work out my moles, it's going to be the mass in grams, 5.13, divided by the mister is 342. 5.13 divided by 342 is 0.015. Now that I know moles, I times it by my Avogadro's constant. And again, doing this gets you to 3 marks. And if you made a mistake on your MR, you'd still get 2. But I make it as far as here. And then again, because it says atoms, I've worked out how many aluminium sulfates I have, but I need to see how many individual atoms. So I've got 2 aluminiums, I've got 3 sulfates, I've got 12 oxygens. So I've got 12 and 3 is 15 and 2, 17 atoms in total. So at the end, I'm going to need to times that by 17. So I'm timesing it by 17, and I get an answer of 1.5351 by 10 to the 23. Okay, it didn't specify significant figures, so it doesn't matter what I leave it to. Essentially, you find moles by doing G over mister, and then you multiply moles by this number. Okay, just sometimes the mister might be a little bit tricky to find, and pay attention if they're asking you for atoms at the end, and they've given you a molecule, you will need to count how many atoms are in that molecule and then multiply at the very end.